Greetings. I am Jason Unruh, the Maoist Rebel, political commentator and third worldist communist, bringing you the words of late Eldridge Cleaver from the original Black Panther Party.
We found it was necessary to stop talking about white people, or at least to try to keep in focus, to stop thinking in terms of black people and white people, because we found that we had enemies in the black community that were just as deadly as our enemies in the white community. So the white community and black community became meaningless categories for us, So we had to start talking about revolutionaries and reactionaries, which has nothing to do with color, We had to start talking about counter-revolutionaries.
Anti-white politics has failed to correctly challenge whiteness. Dialectics has not failed. Rather, it is us Marxists that have failed to further the dialectic. I've been seriously criticized, but what I think is, although I may be wrong, some kind of Marxist Satanist who happens to be black. At least I think that's what's going on. Whatever. The point is that this criticism of me has merit, yet it is flawed. I will not be providing any link to this person because even though these criticisms have merit to them, I find this YouTuber suspicious. The Bundist movement is a Jewish socialist organization that opposes the ideology of Zionism and the State of Israel. In December last year, I was attacked by some YouTuber called Glassno, who seems to be hell-bent on keeping these Jewish socialists repressed. Even though we Marxists have never needed the aid of a Jewish boon more than we do now in our time today. The Bundist movement is down to its three original command members: Dr. Weisfeld, chairman of the revolution; Donna Newman, emissary of solidarity; and Comrade Nett, the cleric of public relations. A serious blow has been dealt to the Bundist movement. I firmly hold to conviction that they furthered the dialectic. What the Bundist movement maintains is that they held reactionary social democratic views in the past, and that ever since adopting the dialectics of Stalin and Mao, yet applying it to their own conditions, they have found that there are errors in Marxist dialectic. I agree the best example is the folly of the so-called Jewish question by Karl Marx. Karl Marx considered Jews to be capitalists because they were moneylenders and merchants. But this is extremely undialectical of Karl Marx. He was pandering to post-Christendom, and we failed to see that the new secular society of Europe was born out of a type of post-Christian world which was known for hiring Jews for their talents and skills. Yet whenever a crisis happened, the elites would blame the court Jews for what they had been hired to do. Karl Marx knew full well that those Jews that did the money lending only did so because they were banned from taking up any other occupation. The Jewish nation is not a fantasy. It's always been quite separate from ethnic cultures that constitute nations. Comrade Stalin's book, Marxism and the National Question, was a good contribution, but also wasted so many of its pages tearing down the Jewish boon. This disagreement between the Jewish labor boon and the Bolsheviks was more than 100 years ago. The communist parties had been in favor of Zionism, while the Jewish boon that always rejected Zionism. They had been correct, and we had been incorrect. Today, the Bundist movement has adopted part of Comrade Stalin's book, Marxism and the National Question, and refuted its hostility towards Bundism. They, unlike a lot of our anarchist and Trotskyist comrades, treat Marxism-Leninism with respect. The Bundist movement started the white question, which runs parallel, unironically, to black Maoist dialectics. Essentially, the white nation does not exist except as a colonial Western international structure that Malcolm X identified. Jewishness exists. Blackness exists. Whiteness does not. The Jewish nation is based on the Torah culture formed around the religious, traditional covenants and oaths. This is how we know that Jews and Zionists are not the same. Zionism is about breaking contracts, but Judaism is about keeping contracts. When Marxists owe a debt to the Jewish boon, we have to assist them in restoring the Jewish diaspora that we helped destroy by voting for Zionism. The Jewish nation is based on Judaism, a culturally religious practice of ethics and contracts, which stands in contrast to Christianity, a religion centered around salvation much like Buddhism, but is not really national in any way. The black nation is a nation that was conceived of the hellish womb of the slave trade ships and were born in the black national liberation struggle. Several remnants from several African nations were stolen. placed on ships and then sold into slavery, not by Jews, as many anti-Semitic historical revisionists wish to propagate, but by Christian Europeans. These many African nations lost their languages and their cultures. Unlike the colonial culture of whiteness, blackness is resistance, a culture of liberation, if they can keep it. But will Eurocentric Marxists let them? If we don't, we are embracing colonialism. Whiteness is a construct for Eurocentricity. We Europeans on the North American continent, Australia, and New Zealand more or less can trace back our lineage. The European mixtures have not only been done so forcibly, but we have done this collectively by choice. So-called whites like myself are simply Europeans. We do need a pan-Europeanism that is against racism. If we don't start a pan-Europeanism for real, then white nationalists and white separatists will instead, and that can only lead to further self-colonization that serves capitalist overlords. We are self-colonizing self-haters. White pride cannot work. White guilt cannot work. We need to embrace collective European responsibility, learn to love each other without hating others. This is called autodetermination, a word coined by Dr. Weisfeld of the Bundist movement. We can hate the Islamic Revolution of Iran, or we can admit that this is our fault for being so Eurocentric that we have largely turned off the Muslim world to socialism entirely. Our Eurocentric view of religion comes from neurosis of post-Enlightenment colonial thinking. We have been very arrogant to think otherwise. Criticism and self-criticism means not to enshrine the past of the great Marxist-Leninist legacy. Marxism has not identified all colonial traces, perhaps opportunistically or perhaps because of the Eurocentric roots of Marxism, that Marxism as a science must shake off. The problem with the words Latino and Hispanic is that they are colonial terms that are directly slapped upon Mexicans and certain South American natives. I would not say that Immortal Technique is fake for his blackness, and I am not going to bring further misrepresentation upon myself by saying that he should stop calling himself Latino. But it is still technically racist to call Mexicans Latino or Hispanic. White nationalists and colonized Mexicans make it impossible for us to correctly identify Mexicans. I, a European, benefiting from whiteness, cannot lecture Mexicans or colonized South American natives by saying, hey, you are not Hispanic or Latino. Yet, the more I allow this misconception to continue, the more I feed whiteness. But if I say kill whitey, giving no context, then I will alienate the Europeans that are potentially part of the struggle too. Malcolm X had European blood in him, yet he was 100% black. I have some African DNA, yet it is clear that I am completely European. We have turned off too many indigenous Mexicans. Most of them consider Marxism to be a form of colonialization. This is 100% our fault. It is first worldist and Eurocentric to deny this. It is irrelevant if several Mexicans have European DNA because of Spanish colonizers that raped them. Ethnicity is not race. Race is unscientific nonsense. I leave you with a video by a strong woman that used to be a part of the Machica movement. She can speak for Mexican people. I cannot. This video came out on January 15th, 2012.
Applying for this job and I'm asked to mark down my ethnicity, and it says, are you Hispanic? Scratch, no. Are you Latino? No. No, I'm not. I am Mexican. I am indigenous. I do not come from Spain. Hispanic means a person or things belonging to Spain. I'm not a Spaniard. I'm not. Yeah, the Spaniards have, killed our people and invaded our lands and are still holding power in our lands, but that doesn't connect me to them. I am not connected to them. I'm not linked to them. Rape doesn't define ethnicity. Not in our case. We're not going to allow rape to define who we are. So Hispanic, no, we're not Hispanic. If we speak English, they say, oh, well, you speak Spanish, so you're Hispanic. So based on that logic, people that speak English should call themselves Britannic, whether they be from China, from Kenya. I mean, they're speaking English, right? No, that's not really the logic that's accepted. But somehow when it comes to our people, we're supposed to say, oh, we speak Spanish, we're Hispanic. Doesn't work that way. Rape and genocide and colonialism are not going to define who we are. And now we have the term Latino. Are you Latina? No, I'm not Latina. I am not a Southern European. A lot of people think that a Southern European is no longer white, is no longer European, but they haven't seen a map. Latin means Southern Europeans, Italians, Portuguese, French. No, we're not any of those things. We are Mexican, Central American. If you're from Guatemala, Guatemalteco. If you're from Honduras, Hondureño. We are indigenous people. We are indigenous people. We are mixed blood and full blood indigenous people. The occupation of our lands for the last 500 years has been a very devastating impact and has had a very confusing effect on our people. But that's because of the education system that only reflects a colonial ideology and a very indoctrinating education system that wants us to neglect and wants us to hate who we are, hate ourselves. We have a huge dilemma, huge problem with self-hate in our communities. But no, we're not Hispanic. Speaking a colonial language that we were forced to speak 500 years ago is not definitive of who we are. The fact that the majority of our people have been scarred with the Spanish or European blood, and if you read the true history of that, it was through rape. So no, we're not going to allow ourselves to be defined by rape. Latino, we're not going to be defining ourselves by Europe. That defines a European. You want a Latino? Look in the map and look at Europe. There's the Latinos. You want a Spaniard, a true Hispanic, like someone like Enrique Iglesias, Julio Iglesias, Rocío Dúrcal. That's what we're talking about. Those are true Hispanics. We're not Hispanic. We're indigenous. We are Nicantlaca. We are Mexican. We are Central American. We are native. We are people original of this continent. We're tired of being mislabeled and colonized even more with the definitions of who we are. We're not Hispanic. We're not Latino. We're not white. We're not half white. We're not crippled white. We're not an offshoot of white. We are indigenous. Full blood and mixed blood indigenous people, not white. Get it right, people. We're not white, we're not Hispanic, we're not Latino, we're Mexican. Look more into it, www.mexica-movement.org. Not Hispanic, not Latino, we are indigenous. No to colonialism. We're not going to allow colonialism to further define us and kill us and tell us who the hell we are.